Hi, welcome to episode 12 of the Dr. Rachel Show. Today I want to talk about a difficult topic, which is dementia. I want to make it clear this is not my area of expertise, so I know a little bit about it, but I'm not an expert. 20 years ago, our grandparents were experiencing this illness, but as we've gotten older, it seems like more of my friends' parents are dealing with this diagnosis, which can be a tough one. I want to start by telling you a story. In 1974, Alice Cooper was at a Grammys party with John Lennon and Elton John's lyricist. Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys, walks up to Alice Cooper and says, "You've got to introduce me to John Lennon." Alice Cooper thought to himself, this is weird. The Beatles and the Beach Boys were both the biggest bands of the 60s. I can't believe they've never met before. Alice Cooper introduces Brian to John Lennon. And John Lennon says, "It's so nice to meet you. I loved the Beach Boys. Y'all were amazing. Your Pet Sounds album was awesome." So Brian Wilson walks off. About 10 minutes later, he comes back and he goes up to Elton John's lyricist and he says, "You've got to introduce me to John Lennon." He introduces him, and John Lennon pretty much goes through the same thing, very complimentary of the Beach Boys. When Brian Wilson leaves the second time, John Lennon looks over to Alice Cooper and he goes, "I've met that guy hundreds of times, but he's not well, you know." I love that story because John Lennon handled that situation beautifully. Brian Wilson actually had schizoaffective disorder and he dealt with hallucinations and cognitive issues for many years until his death. So he wasn't specifically dealing with dementia, but he was still dealing with memory impairment. When people are dealing with dementia, they typically don't know that they're forgetting. Of course, that depends on the progression of the disease. When a person is being forgetful and they don't realize that they're forgetting, one of the best things that we can do is be kind to them and remind ourselves they don't realize they're forgetting. If you say, "I just talked to you about this," or you get agitated, the person who's dealing with dementia is likely going to feel confused, upset, or frustrated. It's typically not going to be a good situation by trying to correct them. One thing that you might experience is cognitive dissonance, the idea that you've been introduced to new information that conflicts with information that you already have. So the person who's experiencing dementia is probably going to be so different than the person that you've always known. It might be hard to understand that a person doesn't recognize you. You might have frustration because these two different people are conflicting in your mind. The person you've always known and the person who is now forgetting. Sometimes when people experience cognitive issues, it totally changes their personality. Sometimes they can become mean, combative, or violent. And in those cases, you need to set boundaries. You might experience grief, and your grief is going to be more complicated than standard grief. When you're dealing with a person who's dealing with cognitive decline, you will grieve in different ways. You're going to grieve the relationship you used to have with them. You're going to grieve the future you wish you could have with them. You're also going to grieve when they die. So the grief process is more layered. If you are the person providing care for the person who's experiencing some type of cognitive issue, you might get burned out. We all have a certain limit. We're not superhuman. And at some point, we're exhausted. And that's normal. So if someone offers to help, or if you need to hire somebody to come sit with that person for a little while you take a break, that's okay. There are also a lot of great support groups. Sometimes people choose to put their loved one in assisted living or a memory care facility. Sometimes they keep them at home. Sometimes they hire caregivers to provide assistance. It's important that we don't judge people because we don't know what their situation is. We don't know their financial situation. We don't know their personal convictions. Whatever they decide to do with their loved one, it's not our business. All we can do is provide support, be kind, and love people right where they are. Remember that I would love to talk about anything that you guys are interested in. Please drop me a message, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys want to discuss, and I'll make another video as soon as I can. You guys take care.